All right, we're live. We're live. Good evening. It's December 8th. It's been a very long time. I've missed you. How are we all? I know it's a little strange. This week and next week, just so you know off the top, are going to be Thursday night shows. Like I've mentioned a couple of times, this house is a Survivor household, and we will not take questions unless they're Survivor-related takes. The season finale, the 3-hour season finale, is next Wednesday night. So we'll do the stream Thursday night next week, same time. But yes, welcome to the show, brought to you by Fanatics and McKean's Hockey and Marcus Gustafson's Blue Line Hockey IQ program. You can scan the QR code above my head or use the link in the description box to use my affiliate link and pick up anything you want from Fanatics. I didn't use my affiliate link for this. I bought a Seattle Kraken reverse retro from this year. It's gorgeous. Of course, Matty Beniers is on the back. I also, on that note, I just got back from Seattle, went to the Seattle Hockey Analytics Conference run by the Kraken. Huge thank you to, Allison Lucan and her team for putting that together. I went to the last one in Columbus and she did a great job at that one. Really fantastic experience. Really great presentations from a number of different people from all walks of the data world. Some really cool panels, and if you ever get the chance to go to one of those in the future, I highly recommend it. Really fun stuff. Thank you to the city of Seattle as well, in case the city of Seattle is watching. Unbelievable arena experience. One of the most incredible, I haven't been to a tremendous amount of NHL arenas, but easily the best one that I've ever been to. Really incredible crowd, super nice people sitting around me and having a couple of laughs and a couple of soda pops. Really amazing experience. So big thumbs up to Seattle if you're ever thinking about going out there. Definitely got to go see a Kraken game, because not only is the city great, but the team's a lot of fun to watch as well. They didn't win, but unfortunately didn't win, but they're a real fun team to watch. Oliver Bjorkstrand and Matty Beniers and even Brandon Tanev was a ton of fun to watch. Just a really fun weekend with almost overwhelming amount of information flying at you all day on Saturday. Things close early in Seattle. I will note that, like, a lot of things around where my hotel was closed around like 7 or 8, maybe 9. Wanted to, whatever. But anyway, in any case, let's get to the questions of the evening. I obviously, with the tracked players, there's a lot of them, so I just made a scrolling list. I will try to read them out as well. Just gotta get that tab back. I think it's gone forever. But anyway, the tracked players this week, Lenny Haminaho, he went down on my board a little bit. Jakub Dvorak, he stayed the same. Other guys move around after, but in terms of the experience tracking that player, he stayed the same. Edward Chalet moved down a bit. I took a look at James Hong. Someone mentioned him at the last stream, so I decided to take a quick look. Callum Richie, I moved him down a bit. Nick Lardis, big fan of him, but he stayed the same. Matvey Michkov stayed the same, but he ended up a little bit higher based on some other guys I looked at. Charlie Stramel moved up quite a bit. He moved up a little bit tracking him, and then a few other guys moved up quite a bit, or he moved past quite a few guys when I watched another game of his this week, because I still don't know what to think about him, and I'm terrified to miss on him. Samuel Honzik down a little bit. Dalibor Dvorsky up a smidge. Luca Cagnoni, I think I just dropped him down because I just didn't see him as the same player. Oliver Moore and Ryan Leonard stayed relatively the same. William Whitelaw dropped quite a bit. Jaden Perron dropped a bit. Grayson Sachin up a little. I moved Noel Nord up a little as well. Oliver Bonk I tracked. He's still not on my list. Michael Burchell moved up a little bit. Alex Ciernik had a great Hockey Allsvenskan game that I tracked before I got on my plane ride. He moved up a little bit. Daniil Boot actually moved up a lot in the last couple of weeks. I've seen a game of his and tracked one, and he was exceptional in both. Connor Levis, still not on my list. Ignat Lutfulin moved up quite a bit. Riley Height moved down a bit. Jakob Stancil got back on my list. Zach Benson, Will Smith, and Leo Carlson all stayed the same. This is tiring. Hope podcast listeners enjoyed this. Oscar Fisker-Molgaard moved up quite a bit. He's cut off because his name is too long, but he moved up, I think, 8 slots. I tracked a guy named Brandon Svoboda, who's pretty good. Lucas Sagrandin, he got put on my list. I tracked a game of Connor Bedard because, of course, I did. How can I not? I removed Nikita Baklashchev from my list. Andrew Crystal got a game. Gavin Torreson got a game. Cameron Johnson got a game. Axel Sandin Pellikka, Andrej Molnar, and Cameron Allen was the last one I looked at. Molnar dropped quite a bit. I moved Sandin Pellikka up a spot, and Cam Allen I kept dropping off of my board because I have really not enjoyed watching him this season. Okay, yeah, now that that's out of the way, it's been a long couple of weeks, and I had a lot of free time on my hands flying on my 5-hour flights to and from Seattle, so a lot went down. Okay. First one from Sebastian. Hi. Hello, Sebastian. Welcome. I'll be very cautious to give Sebastian advice because we're in a fantasy hockey league together, if I'm not mistaken. I quite like both Matthew Soto and Bo Akey as underrated skill guys in the OHL. Any thoughts of the two as top 50s? So, yeah, I've seen Soto a couple of times, tracked one game. Bo Akey, I've been watching for a year. I liked him with Barrie last year, and I had my eye on him coming into this season. I like both of them. I mean, you're right. They're pretty skilled first. I find Bo Akey's a guy where I think there's a lot of upside, but he's kind of all skating and not much else right now. Like, I really like him, but when I was watching him, it was sort of, you know, the decisions in transition were kind of, he was passing the pucks to nobody. He's not really leaning on his carrying ability, at least in what I've seen, as much as I would want him to. But the big problem with him was sort of defensively. Like, he's one of these guys where the forward skating and the mobility moving that way is pretty good, but using that ability defensively is still a work in progress. But I mean, as a second round pick that could maybe be a bottom 4 defenseman in your system, I could easily see it. He's just going to need to refine his defensive game, I think, to get to that point, because I'm not sure that the skating and offensive skill is quite enough yet to project him as like a super high level defenseman. Matthew Soto, Soto's going to be interesting. He works really, really hard out there. Like, every shift you watch him, and he's giving her. I think he's one of these guys that's a little bit too fast, like too quick for his own good, and can sort of get his feet ahead of his hands a little bit too much. But a really, really good off-puck player. He's got skill. He's really young for the draft class. I like him. He's a good, I'd say, you know, mid-round guy. Late, I think he's ranked in my second round, I think. He's in my early third, but he is on my top 10 list for Brock Otten that's coming out. He's on my list there. I think I would be surprised if he was on a ton of different people's lists, because I think he's kind of flying under the radar, but I've liked him. What would your roster for Team Canada look like? I'm going to need to prepare for that question. So maybe I'll make a note and you can ask me next week, because there's a lot to unpack, I think, with that Canada team. I mean, I think Canada, no matter what, is going to perform decently well. I mean, they're going to have Adam Fantilli. They're going to have Connor Bedard. I think they just announced they're bringing Brant Clark too. Like, he just got released by the LA Kings. I imagine Shane Wright might be there if they could release him. I imagine Seattle's going to release him unless he has just a piping hot couple of weeks in the NHL. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I there's a few names on there that I probably wouldn't go for, but I also feel like Team Canada as a whole right now, just, you know, a lot of good players are in the NHL, and we'll see what happens, but I'll think about it and let you know. If I was a team that was currently rebuilding, how would you go about finding and acquiring a number one goaltender? Finding a number one goaltender, like, I mean, the way I would see it is not to think about it too much, because, I mean, really, how many true number one goaltenders you can rely on year over year that you would pay a ton of money for are there in the NHL right now? I don't think there are that many. Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, I'm blanking of, obviously, because I'm on the spot. But I think that what you need to do is find a goalie that will be above average, right? It's a lot easier to build a strong team around solid goaltending than it is to, like, hope you have incredible goaltending. And I mean, so, and I feel like it's so risky when it comes to, like, acquiring a number one goaltender. Like, who was the last guy that's paid like a number one goaltender to change teams? Sergei Bobrovsky, like, for $10 million. That's a number one goaltender. That has not worked out. You know, even the big money goaltending from this offseason, like Jack Campbell, he's not having a great start. It's a huge risk to spend a lot of money to buy a goaltender. I mean, look at what Toronto did. They picked up guys who have decent track records. I mean, Matt Murray was an above-average goaltender last year. Ilya Samsonov did not have a great year, but he has a pretty good track record. And they just got those guys for a decent combined cost of, what, $6.5 million? Almost under $7 million or something? I can't remember. So it's tough. I mean, I don't really know how to answer that question. My thoughts would be, my strategy if I were a GM every year is try to maximize the number of picks I can have any given year within reason and take swings on goalies that save pucks. Like in my team scouting work, you'd have Dan Vladar in your system, Mikhail Burdan, who had a pretty good AHL run for a while. Maybe if things had gone differently, he might be in the NHL right now if Connor Hellebuck wasn't in front of him. I also have got Dmitry Nikolaev in there, who is one of the better goaltenders in the KHL. Like, if you just take calculated bets on guys who just stop pucks, you might be able to find enough to make it work. Or giving guys a second chance who have a pretty decent track record, right? I feel like goaltending is such a mental thing that fit matters quite a bit. The best movie soundtrack, good question. I'm a sucker for The Social Network, Trent Reznor's movie soundtrack. Interstellar also goes along with the movie extraordinarily well. I feel like with a different soundtrack, that movie wouldn't be nearly as good, and the confusing parts of it would stick out far more. Trying to think of another movie soundtrack. I'm trying to think of like older ones. The music syncs. The soundtrack inspired by the movie from Space Jam rocks pretty hard, and they use those songs pretty well in that movie. There's a few. I love a good movie soundtrack. Dune, I think recently Dune was a really great one. I'm a sucker for science fiction. So yeah. Why is Hunter Height not scoring? I mean, he's been better since moving to Saginaw. But with Hunter Height, I just didn't see it last year. I really didn't. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I just find that he's a guy who, if you are taken with skill and only skill, then yeah, he might stick out a little bit. But I found that his off-puck play was really passive. He kind of floated around, and when there was offense to be had and he got past the puck, he could do things. And I just don't think that's going to be conducive to long-term success. But he's on a better team, and I think things have gotten a little better. But yeah, he was not super high on my board because I just didn't see much that really blew my mind. Austin Brass, hello, sir. I sprained my ankle in my first week of ball hockey this week. Nice. Way to go. Everybody's been there. First game I ever played a ball hockey, I had a breakaway, like within 2 minutes of the game starting somehow, and I played defense, and I wiped out. I tripped over my own feet and fell. So there's that. How's your ball hockey going? What are your stats, your team name, and are we winning? So the season just finished. We just got eliminated in a double elimination. I had to miss the last game because I was in Seattle this weekend. It's going okay. I play defense, and I don't know, maybe I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm the meaner defender on my team, which is very different from on brand. I'm kind of still banged up from the season. My elbow was basically one giant bruise for a while. My knee is still all cut up from when I wiped out. It's an outdoor league in the winter, which is crazy, but I slipped and fell and banged up my knee pretty good. I also fell on my butt, hitting a guy in front of my own net. Last game I played, so here's a funny story, I guess, if you want a good ball hockey story. We just finished, so we had a double elimination playoff. Playoff game 1. I thought it was a 2-game series of goal differential because every time I've played ball hockey, that's what it's been. So first game, we're losing, right? We're not doing super well. I somehow managed to show up late because I'm a fool. And so we're down 2 early. And I think by the end of the game, it was like 6-3 or something. And we pull our goalie with about 3 minutes left or 2 minutes left. And this guy on the other team, he's just rumbling up the ice, up the court, not going very fast, not moving super quick. And I'm going, well, I don't want this guy to score on our empty net. My defense partner is just sort of backing up and sort of letting him have space. And I'm going, well, I better support him and do something here. And I don't want to lose worse because I want to make the next game easier for us. So I thought I was being a team player. So I just go charging at this guy. Like, I just run full tilt trying to stick check him and break up the play, because I figure this ball is going to go in or I'm going to do something about it. And he stops. Like, he doesn't even see me coming, and he just stops. And I run square into his chest from the side, and I just bounce right off this guy because he might have 40 pounds on me. I hit the deck. He hits the deck and hits his head. Now, this is a ball hockey league where you don't have to wear helmets, which I will say is the dumbest thing in the world. The fact that you don't have to wear helmets in this, we had a teammate break his nose. Another guy, I think, lost a tooth on another team one night. It's dumb. Like, wear a helmet, right? Like, whatever. But this guy hits his head. He's not all there when I get up, and I feel pretty terrible, but he didn't score. So the reputation of me not being the nicest defenseman on the team, I think, continues. What are my stats? I mean, I have a couple of nice little apples, but I'm more of a put the shot on net and hope for a rebound type guy, or take a step up from the blue line and go cross seam, because in ball hockey sometimes that's just wide open. So yeah. Anyway, it's been a time, but I'm back at it in mid-January out here in my neck of the woods, so I'm looking forward to getting back. Why isn't Callum Richie scoring? His team sucks really bad, and I also just haven't really thought he pushes pace a whole lot. Like, he kind of reminds me of what Shane Wright looked like last year, but without the goal-scoring ability that Shane Wright has. Like, pacey, decently smart, knows how to get the puck around the ice and all that stuff. But with Callum Richie, pretty much across the board, whenever I watch him, I'm going, okay, I'm looking for signs that this guy is not part of the reason his team's not doing very well. And I don't know. I know I've seen better out of him. I know I have. Like at the Holinka tournament, he was good. But I don't know. It's tough. I don't know. I still need to check out more Callum Richie, but I've done 3 games at this point, and none of them have been particularly impressive. But there are some moments where I'm going, okay, there's some power and skill here with him, and he hits hard, right? Like, he's a physical guy at times, but I'm just not seeing what was advertised before the season. Max Swanson or Griffin Erdman? I go Max Swanson pretty clearly there. I like Griffin Erdman, but I feel like he's going to be like a bottom 6 guy in the NHL if he turns out. Max Swanson, I think, has a ton more upside there. Just a dynamic, offensive, skilled guy. Not the biggest guy, but neither is Erdman, but I really, really like Max Swanson. Really big fan of him for next year. Name your top 5 best defensemen and the qualities they possess. I'm a fan of Gulyayev. The footage I've seen reminds me of Rasmus Sandin. Is he top 10 caliber? So Gulyayev is the number 1 guy on my board. My top 5 defensemen right now are Gulyayev, Sandin Pellikka, Simishev, and Cagnoni, and Caden Price. So Gulyayev is a tale of 2 players, really. Like, Gulyayev with the puck, I think, is the most exciting offensive defenseman in the draft. But without the puck, he's one of the most shockingly bad defensive players that's out there. Like, you're not drafting him to play defense that much. He gets beat a lot along the boards. He's not the quickest guy when he's pivoting and getting out of his pivots. Not very strong along the boards. Yes, he's playing against men, but the stick checking is also not particularly great. He just gets beat a lot, and I feel like working on his footwork is going to be kind of a necessity to sort of overcome that. But the offensive tools are dynamite, and when you see him in the MHL, it's just a joke. Like, he doesn't belong there. I don't know if he's KHL ready, but in the VHL even, there's still issues defensively. It's just in the MHL they get masked so much because they just give him the puck, and then he just goes for a skate and does things, which doesn't happen at higher levels, especially for guys like Gulyayev. Sandin Pellikka, I mean, he's kind of up the same alley as Gulyayev in terms of the skill and the offensive ability, but I feel like he's a little more refined defensively. Still needs some work. His gap management is not very good from what I've seen. He allows a lot of space on entries and never really challenges guys. And I find that troubling, but again, when he's got the puck, you don't really care that much because he's got skill. He's really deceptive. He's got really great footwork to walk the blue line and sort of open up some space. He's aggressive offensively. Like, he does a lot of things that I really, really like. And I think he's just a little more well-rounded than Gulyayev, even if Gulyayev might have a bit more skill and sort of high-octane offense that maybe Sandin Pellikka doesn't have. But those guys are literally back-to-back for me on my board. Simishev, Simashev is a guy that I would love to just like get in his ear a little, because he's not scoring points, but he should be. Like, incredible skater for a guy his size. He's just gotten better and better every since I've seen him. I think 2 years ago when I started watching him. Just a really good, big, rangy defender that can make simple plays and really execute well. He's using his physical abilities a little bit more as time goes on from what I've seen. He's hurt quite a bit, but that sucks, but really, really talented player. And again, like, just a really well-rounded guy that I would love to sort of poke at and have him try some things and push a little more offensively, because he's also got some skill, and I like him. He could be a higher on my board by the end of the year, for sure. Luca Cagnoni. Cagnoni's kind of up the Sandin Pellikka alley, but maybe just dialed back a little. Like, I don't really see the same skill level, but he's really confident, takes on a lot of responsibility on his own. A pretty decent passer as well. Just brings a lot of good things to the table in terms of his as a puck carrying sort of offensive defenseman. I don't think he's going to really like push up in the offensive zone and play sort of a forward role like a Denton Mateychuk did last year in the WHL, but just a good puck transporting defenseman that maybe could be on your second pair and has some offensive tools. And Caden Price. I mean, I think Caden Price is just the upside pick. I've seen some spectacular things out of Caden Price, but I've seen a heck of a lot that is not good. Again, similar to Simashev, I'd love to get in his ear. I'd love to coach him. I'd love to try to get him to use his skill more than he does. Get him to make better reads. Like, sometimes he'll try to make these really high skill plays in dangerous spots, and he's just not quite there yet. And would you rather him get more skilled to do those things better, or make better reads and just make simpler plays and keep the skill in the offensive zone? Like, it depends. Or you could do both, like, why not both? But with Caden Price, I mean, the advantage is that he's extremely young, and I think there's a ton of upside with him. I still really like him. I think in my heart of hearts, I draft him and say, look, I think the world of you, but there's a lot of holes in your game, but there's upside, and I think that upside is really, really high. It's just there's a lot of question marks. Like, a lot of times, like, I watched him at the Holinka and I'm going, this guy rocks, and then he goes to Kelowna and I'm going, this does not look like the same player, and then for 5 seconds you go, oh, there's that guy, and then it disappears again. So I don't know, it's gonna be tough. We'll see how it goes. But those are my 5 defensemen, at least right now, and I'm sure it'll be different in 3 weeks. Cam Allen thoughts. Not a fan at all. I don't know what's going on. I mean, look, I get it. He can really shoot the puck. He's got some skill too. Like, he had a moment in the game I did today where he really sort of dangled a guy. It didn't work 100% and he didn't really get through the pressure, but I didn't expect to see that, and there it was. But I don't know. He's a poor defender. Right now, at least. Like, he's not very mobile skating backwards. He's slow to get started in the offensive direction. His puck movement is okay if he keeps it simple. Getting a little bit more complicated, he'll throw passes into no man's land a little too much. He ices the puck a lot. I don't know. With Cam Allen, like, if he's one of the best defensemen in this year's draft, I just haven't seen it. Maybe it's the games I'm watching. I know his production has picked up over the last little while. I think the game I did was from like the end of October or beginning of November. So maybe I'm just not seeing the good version of him yet. But man, I don't know. I watched him today and I thought I'm more likely to drop him off my list than like put him in my first round right now. Because I just think there's a lot of other defensemen that have shown me a lot more that I like. And Cam Allen just isn't really bringing it for me. Hello, Willie. Hello, Bosnian Gaming 442. I've been told about a gem, nice, in the draft this year. What are your thoughts on David Reinbacher? I am going to be very excited to watch Reinbacher at the World Juniors. I like him. He was a guy that I filed a couple reports on for a junior team last year as an import guy. He's a really impressive player. I think he kind of reminds me of like David Jiricek, but dialed back a little bit in terms of skill. Really physical guy, but you can tell he's not physically developed enough to like play that style against men yet. Loses a lot of board battles, loses a lot of stick battles, gets beat physically, but he's a good skater. He can really shoot from the blue line as well. He's rangy. I like a lot that Reinbacher brings to the table. Like, he's in a tier for me where if you wanted to pitch him as high as like 20, there might be other guys I might be a little more interested in, but if you really think you can work on that defensive side of the game and really sort of make it more effective there, then I would absolutely not be mad if you wanted to pick him that high. I know some had him in like the top 15. I think that's pushing it a lot. Like you're really hoping for that high end upside, but I really like Reinbacher, and he's been a lot better this year than I expected him to be. And I liked him coming into this season for sure. Thoughts on Luke Hughes? I don't know. What do you want me to tell you? He's one of the best NCAA defensemen right now. He's awesome. Tons of fun to watch. I think he'll lean more offensively in the NHL, but tons of fun to watch. He's Luke Hughes. What are the player comparables for the second tier of centers in the draft? Will Smith, Dvorsky, and Jaeger. Well, I mean, I lean with Smith a little heavier than Dvorsky or Jaeger. Will Smith kind of reminds me of like Clayton Keller a little. Like extraordinarily high-end skill, but I wonder if the sort of pace in Smith's game, he doesn't really play with a ton of speed or pace. It's just all hands. He's not super involved defensively at all, but the skill is just unbelievable, and the creativity and everything that he brings to the table is just unbelievable. Dvorsky and Jaeger, I have not seen nearly as much that I've liked of them as I have of Smith. I did a game of Dvorsky in Seattle, and I thought he was a little better than what I had seen before, but I still just don't see an elite level top 10 pick there. First round pick, sure, I guess, like late first, sure. Jaeger, Jaeger, I'm pretty sure of what he's gonna be. I feel like Jaeger's gonna be a power play guy. Sam McGilligan, I think, was the one who suggested that he's kind of like Mike Hoffman, and that I would buy. I would absolutely buy that Braden Jaeger is the next sort of Mike Hoffman style player where they score points and they are dynamite on the power play. They have unbelievable finishing ability, but at 5-on-5, you really are left with a lot. Jaeger has been not very good in every single game I've tracked, but boy, that guy can shoot. I personally, like this again, like scouting work and like analysis is very individual, and like figuring out how to value things. There's multiple different ways you can do this. I think some people might really value someone who can really finish, right? Like the Columbus Blue Jackets drafted Yegor Chinikov in the first round. He's a finisher. Braden Jaeger, he's a finisher. And I personally look for other traits ahead of guys who are really good at the end of a chain of possession. But that's just me. Like I want procedural guys, right? Like I've got Timur Mukhanov, I think, ranked, a little bit behind Jaeger, but that guy brings some really good transition ability, and I would easily consider a guy like Mukhanov over Jaeger. Or I've got William Whitelaw ahead of Jaeger, a guy who I really want to coach and sort of pat on the back and encourage to like play a little bit better than he's played in the USHL, because boy, that guy has a ton of skill and potential. Oliver Moore, Martin Misiak, like these guys are guys that bring a lot more to the table, I think, than a guy like Jaeger. But Will Smith of those three, I really have been impressed with, and I would say that the NHL guy he kind of reminds me of a little bit is like Clayton Keller a little bit, where he might be a 60, 70 point guy in the NHL, maybe a little more, if he really hits, and kind of maybe people look at that as a little bit of a disappointment, but it's only because he just doesn't like take over a game. Like Clayton Keller doesn't really take over a game, but he's always consistently a good play driver and a good finisher. And I think Will Smith could be one of those. Has there been a drafting mistake that made you reevaluate how you scout? Well, I mean, I wouldn't say a mistake. Like for example, like I wrote about it on my Substack this week about projectability, and a guy that I brought up was Caden Goalie, who I had, I think, in the early 30s the year he was drafted. And I still feel okay about that. It was a really strong draft. I still wouldn't draft him at 16 where he went, but I look at him a little differently, and what I realize a little bit more is guys that show extremely high-end defensive ability, like Caden Goalie, he showed significant offensive issues that I didn't like, and I think those are still kind of there. But you can work around those issues and really rely on the defensive play. And there's a lot of times where guys play really, really good offensively, and the defense is a problem, and I forgive that. So with Caden Goalie, like he plays defense the exact way I want high-level defensive players to play defense, right? Like he had all the tools to do that, but it's just getting pucks up the ice was a 1 out of 10. It was not great. And he's still one of the worst I've tracked in terms of getting pucks up the ice with control. Yes, maybe it was partly his team's fault, but he's really far out at the back end of the group there. And when you look at him in the NHL, his defensive results have been great, and his offensive ones have been negative relative to Montreal. But that's okay. He carries defensive value, and that's fine. So he's probably the biggest example of someone where it made me rethink and sort of reset myself a little bit in that area. And I think it's why I have guys like Simashev and Jakub Dvorak and David Reinbacher, maybe even Maxim Sturbach a little bit higher. I have Sturbach lower than most, but I'm trying to value those guys a little more for what they bring. JJ, hello. I was wondering if you ever followed up on Ilya Nikolaev. Had a really good USHL season last year and now playing pro in the Flames organization. I don't know. I've seen Nikolaev a couple of times over the years, and I still see the same player I did when I first did one of my videos on him early on in my work. I don't think there's a pro player there. Like, I think he was a 21-year-old in the USHL last year, and yeah, like that's just, I don't know. It's hard to go from a D+3 USHL player to the NHL, but it's not impossible, I suppose. I don't know. I always thought of him as sort of a low upside guy. We'll see what happens. It's never over until it's over, but we'll see what happens. Texas Hockey. Hello, Texas. Did you happen to see Lassi Alanen's tweets today? If so, who stood out to you? I did not see them. I saw a couple of them posted in the Scouching Discord server, accessible to Patreon subscribers at $5 and up every month. Let's see. Oh, Mitch Marner is on a 21 game point streak. Let's just go to them. Those graphs are useful and interesting, but I don't know. I don't really take a whole lot away from them personally. I find a lot of it, like what's the value in knowing that someone's in like an elite prospect is in the 96th percentile in the NCAA? Like it's cool, but like, seeing Brock Faber like 93rd percentile, it's like, okay, great. Like, anyway, I'm trying to look here. I would have been curious to see one on Ryan McAllister. Yeah, like I'm not surprised by Ryan Ufkos, who got posted in there. I mean, there's a lot. Like, I don't know. I don't want to go through all of these. I'm really pleasantly surprised by Seamus Casey's results to this point. He's been really, really good from the games I've seen with Michigan. But yeah, I don't know. I always try to sort of formulate my own opinions on these players when I look at these charts. I sort of go, yeah, a lot of it sort of lines up with what I see. But I mean, like so many of these guys are pinned in like the 90 plus percentile in these areas. So like how, it's good to know that they're playing well. And a lot of it does line up to sort of where I'm at. But anyway, it's interesting stuff. It's cool stuff. Matatron, what's going on? Have you heard any updates with Frank Nazar? No news on his injury and surgery seems concerning. Yeah, I haven't heard anything. No. If the Sharks trade Meyer to the Islanders, what prospects should we want in return? Well, let me look. I got to open up my spreadsheet here of, so the Islanders, I mean, the Islanders don't really have a ton in their system. Like, I feel like William Dufour would be part of that package. I mean, I don't think you'd want to give up Aatu Ratu, and every time you talk about giving up, a player that's really good, you immediately jump to the other team's best prospects, and usually the best prospects don't move. Like, I would imagine that trade would be at least one first-round pick. I'd probably go for Kaliadelius, couple first-round picks, and like William Dufour. That would be kind of where I would go, because I feel like they're not going to give you Aatu Ratu, and if they do, it might be 1-for-1, and I don't think I'd do that trade 1-for-1 or something like that. Alex Jeffries could be an interesting pickup, even though he's playing in a pretty weak NCAA conference. I don't know. There's maybe something like that, but I mean that there's not much else I would want that's in the Islanders system, to be perfectly honest. Next one. Where are we here? Richie and Allen dropping. Yes, they both were not very good in the games I did. Graham, what's going on? I heard McKean's is looking for a new scout in the U.S. region. Hey, man, apply, do it. Feel free. You know, they're open minded. If you want to do it, do it. Tyler, how many players between 2019 and 2023 would you draft over Adam Fantilli? I feel like he's probably going number one most years. Yeah, I mean, Jack Hughes, I think I might take over Fantilli. Byfield and Lafreniere, I definitely wouldn't. Raymond, Stützle, Rossi, definitely wouldn't. 2021, yeah, Beniers, I like Fantilli more. Power, I like Fantilli more. Wallstead, Liesel, whatever. And yeah, Shane Wright, Yuri Slafkovsky, everyone. Yeah, so I think the only one I would consider maybe is Jack Hughes. But Fantilli is a friggin' rock star. Any thoughts on Matthew Wood? Yeah, I mean, look, I've come around on Matt Wood a little bit over the course of the year. Like, he was in my sort of 40 range at the beginning of the year. But, I mean, look, that guy, I think that guy, if you paste him to a skating coach for the next 5 years, you could have a really interesting player. Like, he's not, he scores, but I'm not sure his shot is as good as other scorers in this year's draft. Like, I like Braden Yeager's shot more. But what Matt Wood does really well, especially for a guy his size, is just get out of trouble. Like, he finds ways to get out of pressure and takes even bad passes. He finds ways to take bad passes and make space and get the puck away from danger and keep it moving somehow. And that, for a big guy, like, he's not clunky. Like, he's not clunky with his hands. He's certainly clunky with his feet, but he's not clunky with his hands. He keeps it simple in the offensive zone. Puck's on net, but if he spots a seam, he knows how to put a pass there. There's a lot of things with Matt Wood where I'm like, yeah, I could see him being a middle six guy that can score. Maybe not the best defensive player, but you don't got to worry about him that much. And he can make a play. He can shoot okay. Like, but the big thing about him is that he's got some good hands, and there's a lot to like about him. So I don't know. I like Matt Wood more than I did at the beginning of the year. But, I mean, I don't know. I still see, like, top 15 as a bit of a stretch. Like, I feel like my group up until 20 is pretty much locked right now. And, like, even from 20 to 25, I feel really strongly about taking swings on those guys. Like Siniev, Nadeau, Misiak, Moore, Whitelaw. All these guys are guys that I've really, really liked and would take a gamble on. And Matt Wood is in the group that's just behind those guys that I think are more safe, but might be less sort of fun. You know what I mean? What's behind Andrej Molnar's fall? Well, I had him ranked really, really high. He started the season, I thought, really, really good. But I mean, look, he's a guy who gets around the ice really, really well. I think he reads play extremely well. He anticipates play extremely well. But it's now been a couple of games I've seen him in a row now where pretty much any time the puck hits his stick, he's either making a safe pass or the play dies. He doesn't have the skill level to attack the middle of the ice. He doesn't have the skill level to sort of problem solve on the fly. He just needs a chip and chase style game. He needs to make simpler plays, and he does. Like, his pass percentages are really high, but they're high because he's finding outlet options a lot. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think it's regressing back to where I think he more should be. Like, he's right now in my early third, I think. If I'm not, yeah, he's in my early second, right? We're wrong number. Early second. And I feel like if he's the second guy I draft, I'm happy getting Molnar. You know, he's a good player, but I don't know. I want to see more out of him. I imagine he'll be at the World Juniors, and I'll be curious how he does there. How would you rank these prospects and why? Christian Kyrou, Ty Nelson, Seamus Casey, Lane Hutson. So I'll do it in terms of upside. I would go Casey, Hudson, Kyrou, Nelson. Kyrou and Nelson, I'd say, are a tie. Just toss a coin. Casey, then Nelson, or Casey, then Hudson, then Nelson and Kyrou, flip a coin. 3 days a week, I might go Kyrou. 4 days a week, I might go Nelson. But I really like Seamus Casey's upside, and I'm pleasantly surprised to see how he's done this year. But I also really like how Lane Hutson has played this year. I mean, some teams could have had both, but that's okay. I guess you can have only so many good skilled defensemen on your team, I suppose. But anyway, I don't know. Casey's creativity and skill level, I think, is a little bit better than Hudson, where Hudson kind of has a relatively easy toolkit from the blue line, and that's how he generates a lot of his offense, just sort of shimmy shaking guys off of him and using skill and all that fun stuff to make plays happen. Ty Nelson is just a guy who blasts it from the point for sure, and that's fun. I think Kyrou is really skilled, and I think that's, he plays almost like a forward, which is where a lot of his points kind of come from, which is cool. It's always just a risk playing like that in the NHL, though. How has Matthew Savoy been thus far? I thought he's been good. I think he's been better than his production has indicated. He seems a lot quicker than he was last year when I've seen him. He's just a lightning rod now. A really, really interesting player that I've liked. Savoy, I thought it was good where they drafted him. He's a high upside pick. He's fast. He's skilled. I think he's been playing pretty well this year. Again, you don't want to like push pace too much, especially at the junior level, but I'm not really worried. I mean, I know he's not on the World Junior team, which I think that's probably a mistake. But, if you're just looking at the production, yeah, I guess you could raise some questions about him. Oh, I got water on my phone and my desk. I don't know how much of the Thunderbirds you've seen recently, but has your view of Korchinski changed much since the draft? No. I mean, I'm not surprised he's scoring more points than he did when he scored a point per game on the best WHL team in the league last year. Or not the best WHL team, but one of the best, and he's on the best WHL team this year. So yeah, like he's producing a lot. That's not a surprise. Again, like last year in the draft, I said this like 800 times. After Jiricek went off the board, all bets were off. You could make a case for like 20 different guys. And I think Korchinski was a guy where if you want to bet on upside for a puck-carrying offensive defenseman that can make a play off the blue line, yeah, he's a good option. So yeah, I mean, my view of him hasn't really changed a ton, and he's really good. He's doing well. Felix Unger-Sorum, Hannes Hellberg, and Nikita Susiev thoughts. Seen them all, not a fan of any of them. I know Felix Unger-Sorum is really young. I know Hannes Hellberg has a lot of points at the under 18 level. And he did last year, and this year he's been doing really well at the under 20 level. I liked Nikita Susiev a little bit preseason when I watched him play with Varyagi, but I just haven't seen it enough for me to really get behind him. Ignat Litfulin is more my brand, and that guy is a lot of fun to watch. Unger-Sorum and Hellberg, I just don't see I don't see high-end prospects there personally. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I don't see it with those guys. Maybe I need to watch them again, but whenever I watch Lexand, those two guys are not usually the guys that like stick out as, oh, I need to keep an eye on these dudes. Damian Clara, I can't give you much on him. I don't really know much. He's been an okay player at junior level in Sweden. He played a game at the Allsvenskan and did really well. He's gigantic and Italian, though, so that's fun. Is there anybody in the queue worth watching? Alexis Gendron, he's fun. I don't have any Q players ranked, actually. Not Ethan Gauthier. I'm trying to think if I have any. I mean, I'm kind of interested in like Tyler Peddle, and I'm trying to remember. Like Matthew Cataford has some moments that I like, but I'm not. Yeah, no. The queue, I just haven't found anyone in the queue that I'm like clamoring over to really sort of put the name out there on. Oliver Tulk. Duh, wrong name. That's a name I have seen. Yes, this guy rings a bell. He's a teeny tiny little guy. I've seen a bit of him. I was not super blown away with what I saw. I feel like he was kind of like this year's version of the guy from Swift Current who is small, Matthew Ward. I feel like he's kind of like that, where he's got some skill, decent finisher, but I'm not sure there's enough to make it work. Maybe Justin Cote is a better comparison with Oliver Tulk. I just haven't really seen it. Can you attempt to explain Tage Thompson's career trajectory? I mean, I wonder how much of it is just a mental thing. I was someone was talking about him, and made a lot of sense, talking about how he started to, I think it might have been on 32 Thoughts, where they said something along the lines of like, he realized that like this was it for him. Like he was either going to need to really put it together, or that was it for him. And I think that he started hitting the gym with a lot better training plans in the off season. I think he started like a new diet or something that really sort of kept him more lean. I remember watching Tage Thompson when he was draft eligible too, and really liking the sort of skill level that he had. And it always kind of confused me why he never could make it work in Seattle. Like, I wonder if Seattle kind of tried to bulk him up more and like get him to be a more physical, giant power skill winger. Whereas with Buffalo, he plays like he's 5'10". You know, like he plays like he's a lot smaller with a ton of skill, which I love. And so I wonder how much of it is just finding a style of play for him that works a lot better for his natural style of play, right? Like, we see it. He's really, really skilled, and he can really shoot a hockey puck. And he's got range, he's got length, he's big. If he's fast, that also helps. And yeah, so I think Tage Thompson, I think a lot of it has, I mean, look, for every Tage Thompson story, like, who else has had a career trajectory like this, right? For every Tage Thompson, there's 20 guys that by the time they're 25, they don't hit a giant upswing in their career. So I don't think it's like so-and-so is going to be the next Tage Thompson or whatever. I think that's, you know, I don't think you can predict that Tage Thompson's going to do what he's done. I don't think there's any way, because people like he was the butt end of a joke that he was part of the Ryan O'Reilly trade, like ubiquitously. And like, it wasn't even the current regime in Buffalo that landed him. It was the one that's not even there anymore, and he's now sort of figuring it out. So that makes me think that it was something about rethinking how he plays and the right kind of coach for him that gets him playing the right way for his game, and that helps, I guess, because I guess there was something always there. But I don't know. He's just one in a whatever story where he just blasts off mid-season or mid-career. And we'll see if it's sustainable, but he's been playing extremely well. Thoughts on Oliver Moore? Gary says hi. Hello, Gary. Yeah, I like Oliver Moore. Really crafty with his hands. He opens up passing lanes really well with his hands. He's maybe not the quickest guy or the most skilled, but he knows how to use his hands really, really effectively. And I like that about how he plays. Makes a lot of plays, and that's sort of the biggest thing about him that I've always taken away. He leans a lot more offensively, but yeah, I mean, I like Oliver Moore. You know, I like him. He's in my first round. I think he's another one of these, you know, skilled auxiliary offensive guys that can make plays off the boards and do so creatively. Like, he uses sort of high, sort of hockey sense, quote unquote, plays to make plays, which is really fun to watch. Any thoughts on Noah Chadwick or Reed Andreessen? I've seen Andreessen. I'm not a fan, really. I don't like. He's not Lane Hudson, I guess is what I'm saying. I feel like he does enough to make it work in the WHL, and I just haven't seen enough to really get behind him fully. Noah Chadwick is one that I have not seen, but I will check him out for sure. I will check him out. Thoughts on Mailloux in the OHL so far this season? He's fine. He's Logan Mailloux. He's the same player. Defensively, he's still kind of poo-poo. Offensively, if he's skating in a straight line and shooting pucks, he's going to score points. He's still Logan Mailloux. The Habs look like they're going to keep Slafkovsky in the NHL. Would you release him to the World Juniors if you were GM? Would I release him to the World Juniors? No, because I feel like the lessons he needs to learn will be learned in the NHL. Like, I would do whatever I could to keep him not discouraged. But like, what's he going to do if he goes back to the World Juniors, right? Like, I mean, you could do it, but does he really need a confidence boost, right? Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think he's been that bad in the NHL. He's not scoring, but I don't, like, again, this is the Yuri Slafkovsky that I tried to tell people was probably going to be here if he was in the NHL next year. Good puck protector. The rest is a work in progress. And the rest is a work in progress. If he gets his chances, he can really shoot. But there's a long way to go for him. You know, the World Juniors might be a nice confidence boost, I guess, because he would score goals. But, you know, what are we doing, right? Like, if he really desperately needs the time, then sure. But I feel like more likely he's gonna do fine in the NHL and learn the lessons he needs to learn there. Why is Ryan Greene's stock seem to skyrocket? Well, I mentioned Ryan Greene last year as like one of the more confusing guys that I saw, because I liked watching him, but he didn't do anything. Like, Green Bay last year, him and Cam Lund were really skilled guys, Ryan Greene was one of the most efficient guys offensively and defensively in transition, extraordinarily good puck carrier. And Cam Lund was really skilled, but they just didn't drive any offense, and their involvement going both ways, both of them, was really low from what I remember. And I'm going, okay, there's little things that these guys do in the data that works out really, really well. And, I mean, with Ryan Greene, I mean, I haven't seen a ton of him in the NCAA this year, but if he's a guy where if I'm coaching him, I'm like, all right, this is my guy where I get him the puck in the defensive end, and he carries it into the offensive end for me, and he makes a play. And if that works in the NCAA, then who cares? It works. And I feel like that may be where a lot of it's coming from, but I don't have any evidence of that. But like that's based on how he's played with Green Bay when I saw him. But yeah, he's outperformed what I expected. But yeah, I mean, at the World Juniors, I think he's on the camp roster. I would be looking for him to be a really surprising guy when it comes to transporting pucks and using skill, getting pucks up the ice and playing really, really well. I mean, I had my doubts about him, but there was still things where if his name came up in a meeting, I'd be like, okay, yeah, he's really good at some stuff, and there's some really promising things here. He did not take a bad shot in any of the games I did. He just made every attempt count a lot, and they just didn't go in. So yeah, I think there were just a lot of good things happening in small doses that have now been made a focal point of his game, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Do you think Adam Fantilli's stats might be inflated because of the team he's on? They're pretty loaded with high-end talent. I think it's more likely that Fantilli is the reason he's inflating other people's stats. That guy is a fantastic offensive player, fantastic transition player, wicked finisher. Like, his stats are inflated by himself because he's an excellent finisher, and he also makes plays really well off the boards and along the half wall and coming off the boards and all of these things. He does so well. I get the feeling like Rutger McGroarty is producing like he does because he shares the ice with Adam Fantilli a lot of the time. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that a draft eligible guy who is second in NCAA scoring right now is artificially inflated because of who he plays with. I think that, especially for a center, I think he is a major part of just how good offensively that team has been. Thoughts on Valentin Jugin and Callum Mangone? Mangon. I liked Jugin a little when I watched him. I didn't see a ton that really blew my mind. He's got some skill. But I feel like in the OHL, he's been kind of ho-hum, but the team around him also has been pretty ho-hum. Caleb Mangone, if I'm thinking of the right person, again, is that the guy on Windsor? Saginaw, the other team in red and blue. I was thinking of someone else. I haven't seen Caleb Mangone. I'll check him out. I must be thinking of someone else. Thoughts on Jesse Kieskinen, Kasper Halttunen, Noah Dauer-Nielsen, and Dmitry Simashev? Well, we went over Simashev a little earlier. Noah Dauer-Nielsen, he's scoring a ton of points, but I don't really buy it long-term as a super high upside guy. He's not very mobile, really extraordinary skill and finishing ability in tight, though. Like, I saw one goal he scored. He took a pass, like, right in the goal mouth and made one deke to his left to get around a defender's stick and then roofed it like above the goalie's shoulder from, I don't know, 2.5 feet out, like 3 feet out. And it was beautiful. But most of the time when he plays, he's not really doing much. Like, he's like his brother, right? Like, his brother was a great finisher, really good playmaker. Noah Dauer-Nielsen has some good finishing skill, but the pace of his game is pretty low. He's a pretty clunky skater. But there's skill there. Like, I feel like, I imagine the Detroit Red Wings will draft him in like the 3rd round, and he'll be an NHL player for sure, because that's just what the Red Wings do. And I think that would be perfectly reasonable. Kasper Halttunen, I can see why he's ranked really high. I don't really like him as much. I feel like he's going to be a good sort of 3rd-line physical guy. Like, I feel like if you draft him in the 1st round, you're going to get like a Scott Laughton type player. You know, physical, can be kind of annoying, kind of a jerk. Plays a way that NHL people love, but I don't think he's going to move the needle a tremendous amount unless he doesn't have the puck. Jesse Kieskinen, I haven't seen a ton that I've really liked out of him. I know he's scoring a ton. He's really small, and I don't think he has like Logan Stankoven sort of I'm 5'8" and still going to be a good NHL player kind of thing going on. I don't know. Every time I've seen Kiiskinen, I think he's a good junior player, but I'm not totally sold on his pro upside. But I believe he's played in the Liga this year a little, and I just haven't been blown away by that either, but I might be mistaken. I might have to go look and see that again. What do you see Callum Richie becoming in the NHL? Maybe a third line guy. I don't know. I don't know. I've seen Callum Richie better than how I've seen him in the OHL this year. I know his team's not very good, but a lot of the data that I track cuts out a lot of the effects that a team might have on him. Let me just pull his name up here. Callum Richie. Like, a lot of it is just very mediocre. He's getting shelled in terms of shot attempts. He's not driving a ton of offense. He doesn't have very many shot assists. He's missing on over half of his passes. His transition game is relatively mediocre involvement with average to poor results. It's just not what I expected of a top 10 guy, but he's physical and he's got a bit of flashes of skill that you could maybe exacerbate a little bit. I don't know. It's tough. I don't see a tremendous amount of Richie to this point that I'm like over the moon with. But still early in the year. I haven't been able to watch Michael Misa much. What type of player role does he fit? Who does he play with? I honestly haven't seen enough to give you a detailed breakdown of that. All I know is from what I've seen of him, he's a good north-south guy. He gets up the ice. He's skilled, selfless playmaker as well. Like, he slots in great in the OHL already. He's better in the OHL this year than I thought he would be. I'll say that much. Watch any women's hockey? Favorite team to watch right now in men's NCAA? Yeah, so I do watch women's hockey. I'll definitely watch the international tournaments whenever they're on. I love whenever I do check out like non-international tournament women's hockey. I love watching Cornell. Greg Revac turned me onto the Cornell Big Red women's team. They're a lot of fun, and they play a more free-flowing sort of Carolina-style game, which I love. I love the Czech women's team as well. I think the Czech women's team has been making some big inroads. They're a ton of fun, for sure. Favorite team in the men's NCAA right now? I mean, I get like piecemeal experiences of all of these leagues, so I can only speak for myself, and I probably will be wrong. I mean, Michigan is a ton of fun, but that feels like the easy answer. I love watching Ryan McAllister with Western Michigan because his line is just bananas, and he looks great, and he's on my list for a reason. So I'm the Arbor Xhekaj of my ball hockey team. I've got points, so that's a plus. Thoughts on Reinbacher? He's been asked about. Gavin McCarthy. Yeah, I don't see much out of Gavin McCarthy. Like, he seems like he's skilled enough to produce in the USHL, kind of like Jacob Gavin last year, and I just don't think McCarthy is destined for massive upside. I personally don't see that. I've seen bits of him over the year, but not a tremendous amount. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not super taken with him. He's fine. I feel like he'll get drafted, but if he didn't get drafted, I wouldn't be surprised. Which players are you looking forward to most seeing in the World Juniors? I mean, I'd love to see Fantilli and Bedard. That's going to be a ton of fun. The U.S. has a pretty young team in camp. I'm curious to see how guys like, I think Ryan Leonard is there. Will Smith is there. Gavin Brindley, I think, got invited. Did he? I might have to double check that. I might be wrong. I'm just pulling up my World Junior tracking doc, which will be public at some point once the rosters are finalized. I will have a World Junior preview article out at some point. The U.S., let's see. So the U.S. is bringing Smith, Leonard, Strammel, and Brindley. Yeah, like those are fun. I'll be curious to watch those guys. Sweden, I'll be curious to see the Djurgården boys doing their thing. I feel like they could do quite a bit. I feel like they could do some damage. Who else? I don't even know who the rest of the teams have announced yet. I mean, Austria, they're going to have Reinbacher. Ian Scherzer is going to be an interesting one to watch on that team, but I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel there. The Swiss, I don't see a ton on the Swiss team that's really going to probably blow your mind. It'll be fun to see Jordan Dumais at the World Juniors if he makes the team. That would be something. That could be a fun experience, I suppose. Who knows? I traded Robertson and Pettersson for Draisaitl in fantasy. I mean, you got Draisaitl, and it depends on your league, right? If you can backfill the open roster spot with someone who scores, then great, you got Draisaitl. But those are some two good-ass hockey players. How hyped was Matthews in his draft year? Did people see this out of him back in his draft year? I mean, yeah. I remember his draft year, and people were... I mean, he was fantastic in his draft year. I mean, I remember watching him in the Swiss League that year a little bit, and just being blown away with how quickly he got up the ice for a big man, and the shot quality he had was incredible. I mean, I don't know. It didn't take very long in the NHL or the World Cup, I should say, to be like, yeah, this guy could score pretty much at will in the NHL. Like, his shot is that good. I didn't see the sort of physical player that he has become. Like, that's been the thing that I didn't expect, and I think a lot of people didn't expect in his draft year. He's really sort of learned how to put the team on his back, kind of at both ends, maybe physically to his detriment, but he's playing a much more complete game nowadays. Is Dahlin the best player from the 2018 draft? Well, you ask different people, they wouldn't have said that. I mean, the 2018 draft, I'm just pulling it up now. I mean, I remember Dahlin, to me, was a pretty strong one. Svechnikov could have maybe challenged him. Who else would I even put in that range? Yeah, I think Dahlin is probably the guy. If I had to pick anyone out of that draft, probably would be him. Yep, probably. Yeah. Is Cohen Ziemer good? Cohen Ziemer does certain things well. I mean, he's really smart. I think Ziemer makes up for his lack of foot speed really, really well. Really good puck distributor. Drives a lot of good results, at least when I track him. Let me just pull up his data here. Yeah, like, he puts up a lot of really good results. Really good offensive transition guy. Defensively, he'll get involved. He tries, but the foot speed, I think, really sort of lets guys go right through him. He plays more physical than I expected. There's a lot to like. He's a good playmaker off the boards. You know, the shot selection could be a little better. I think Riley Height's a little more flashy, but I think Cohen Ziemer really sort of knows how to read the ice and make plays and try things out that might work. And yeah, I mean, a third of his pass attempts that I've tracked have been through or to the slot, which is pretty incredible at this point. We'll see. I like Cohen Ziemer. Could be a good second round pick, I suppose. He's 40 on my board right now. Thoughts on Savoy, Geeky, Matejchuk not being invited to the World Junior team? I mean, I'm not surprised about Matejchuk or Geeky, to be honest, because they frankly just haven't been that good in the WHL this year. I mean, I shouldn't say that about Matejchuk as much, because Matejchuk, you know, I just mean underwhelming relative to what was expected. But I look at the Canadian team. Here, I'll just pull this up just so you get a little free preview of what's to come in the future when the teams are announced. But, I mean, you know, look, you've got, you know, like, if you're going to bring guys like Jordan Dumais and Josh Waugh, like, I get it. They're scoring a lot of points. Wow, I forgot Ryan Greene was Canadian. That's a big win for Canada. I thought he was American for some reason. But, I mean, like, if you're going to bring, like, Caden Bankier and you know, a lot of these are defensemen here, but, like, Caden Bankier and Colton Dock, and you're not going to bring Matthew Savoy, I don't know. That seems questionable to me, even if you want to do like a top 6, bottom 6 thing for whatever reason, because it's 2008. Maybe that's what they're thinking, but I don't know. It's really hard to tell anymore. I would probably have brought Savoy at least to camp, but we'll see. I mean, they're still going to have a good team. I think I need to update the goalies. That just reminds me. Okay. Do you have any thoughts on the 3 OJHL players that are on NHL scouting list? They're Giacomo Martino, Jack Zalato, and Cameron Eck. I have not seen those guys. I will check them out. Let me just copy pasta this so that I do not forget, because I absolutely will. The Kings will probably need or want to trade one of their young right-handed defensemen this year. If you were acquiring someone, how would you rank Jordan Spence, Sean Dursey, Helge Grans, and Brant Clark as prospects? I'd say Clark, Spence, Dursey, Grans. There would be my order. Any updates on the situation with Russian prospects? Are they going to be able to come over or play in major tournaments anytime soon? I I get the feeling that as long as their government is, doing war crimes like every week, they're not going to be welcomed in international tournaments anytime soon. So that probably does that. I mean, I feel like Russian prospects, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's tough because obviously you don't want to penalize innocent players for being in that country or from that country, but an international tournament is very different, especially with how Russia uses hockey as a political tool. So you don't want their government being represented internationally right now, personally, in my opinion. But the players individually, I mean, I wouldn't not draft Russians, right? Like, I disagree with the idea of not having Russians in the import draft. If anything, more Russians should be coming. We should be more welcoming to Russian players to come over, because I get the feeling that over time, the resources for them to play and train at a really high level over there are going to diminish if they aren't already diminishing. So yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that, so there are things I disagree with. I think that Russian players are innocent for the most part in all of this. So if you want to make it a more inviting situation for them to come over, then yeah. I don't know. It's really tough, but it didn't really seem to stop NHL teams from drafting them, and I think that trend will continue. And we'll see what happens. I mean, it's still a fluid situation in Russia. I think what's going on at home, we'll see how it goes. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't have any updates, but I don't expect anything to change. Thoughts on Snuggerud being tied for 4th in NCAA scoring in the as an 18-year-old, locked for the World Junior team? I mean, he should be on the team probably. I mean, I watched some of Snuggerud this year. I mean, look, the guy can wire it. Again, he's one of these guys where he can score. He can put the puck in the net. That was never really in question, though. The rest of the game, every single time I watched him last year, outside of maybe at the U18s some of the time, the rest of the picture was pretty murky. And I feel like in the NHL, if you have the rest of the picture being murky, it's going to be a tough road. But I think where they drafted him made sense, and his shot quality is excellent, and I'm not surprised that when you tee him up, he puts the puck in the net. That is what he is, well, not paid, but that is what he's there to do. Kyle, what's going on? What in the world is Montreal doing with Jan Mysak? Kid stuffed at the 4th line AHL. Hell, he's not. I just don't think Jan Mysak is it, man. The more I watched him in his draft year, the farther and farther down my board he went. He was my Mr. Overrated in that ranking video I did that year. If you're gonna play a high skill game, you gotta just be able to take over a game. And I never saw him take that next step, right? Like, he was always good with his first skill move, but couldn't blow through the pressure. He was always good with his finishing, but again, couldn't blow through the pressure. He was soft on his feet because he's small, and he never really sort of learned the body positioning to sort of fight off that pressure. Montreal is much more progressive than they used to be, and he's still playing 4th line in the AHL. I think that tells you something. Would I pick him up if he was a throwaway in a trade? Like, if I was trading someone who was on an expiring deal and I got a 3rd round pick and they gave me a choice of prospect and Mysak was on that list, would I take him? Sure, I'd give him a go, right? Like, I'd give him a fresh start, but I don't think the hope is there for him to crack an NHL lineup. Like, what's he going to do in the NHL? It's hard to see what his role is going to be, because he's always been very good, but not, I don't think take over a game, like take over a possession style good. And to play his brand, I think that's what he needs to do. Where does Leo Carlsson rank right now relative to what William Eklund was in his draft year? I think I lean Eklund a little more than Carlsson, but they're very different players, right? Like, Carlsson is much more like a Matt Sundin, but playmaker version. And Eklund is more like a William Nylander style evasive skill perimeter playmaker kind of guy. Very different styles of players, but I might go with the upside of Eklund a little higher, but I really like Leo Carlsson. I think that guy's just going to get better and better every year. You know, not that Eklund won't, but I think Carlsson will get more comfortable in his body, get more comfortable with his skill, get more confident at the pro level. And I think there's a lot of moments that Carlsson has in the SHL where I go, oh, I haven't seen that out of an SHL guy much. Like looking off one pass option and blindly passing to another one in the dangerous slot area. Really impressive sort of little things that you notice. Whereas Eklund was more of a high pace, attack the offensive zone style guy. So they're just different, really. If Mishak was okay, whatever. I haven't heard of Whitelaw in a while. Yeah, I mean, he's been a little quieter than I expected, but Youngstown is a weird team. Like, I've watched a lot of Youngstown hockey this year. I really liked Brendan Svoboda when I watched him, and he's only playing like third line minutes for them. Kenta Isagai still can't score, but he's still Kenta Isagai out there. Like, he's still doing the thing, and I feel like at Ohio State, he's going to find a gear. Andrew Strathman, like, I feel like their defensemen are not great, and I think that brings down the rest of their game. Like, I watch Andrew Strathman play, and it's like he's trying to be Cale Makar, but he doesn't skate like Cale Makar or have quite the skill level, and it's horrifying at times to watch him play the way he does. But then once in a while, he does something that's really, really cool. But I've seen more often than not Strathman hanging his team out to dry, and he's like one of their top defensemen. They just haven't gotten, like, getting the puck up the ice with control seems to be a problem, and Whitelaw needs to be a recipient of that, or they just need to just ride Whitelaw, and give him the puck every single time he's on the ice and whatever. But I find that Whitelaw, he plays, I hate to use the word selfish, but he does play a bit of a selfish game where he's running out of the defensive zone really early and looking for stretch passes, and they don't hit his stick, and if they do, he has trouble corralling them. But once the puck's in the offensive zone, like, oh my God, the skill level he's got and the creativity and it's just like, he brings great joy to the game of hockey. And I love players like that. And if you can get Whitelaw in like the third round, like Daniil Gushchin did, yeah, you do that. Thoughts on Roman Kantsarov and Alexander Rykov? I like Rykov a lot more. I think he's a better 200-foot guy. I think Kantsarov, once pace gets ratcheted up, I really want to see Kantsarov in the KHL and see how he does. He's pretty small. He can problem solve under pressure decently well for a small guy, but he's not really like much for attacking the offensive zone much. He's a perimeter guy, shots from the perimeter, passes stick along the perimeter, just very passive. But his team is also really good, so it kind of gets masked by that. I don't know. I like Rykov a lot more. He needs to finish a little better for sure, but he brings a lot of 200-foot sort of intelligence and reads play really, really well. What's the hype on Oliver Bonk? I don't know. He's not on my list. Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I don't know. I'm half joking, but he's, to me, like, I don't know. He puts pucks on net, right? I think that's where a lot of his points come from. He puts pucks on net. He makes simple passes to more skilled guys on his team like Brody Crane or Denver Barkey or whoever. Landon Sim has played pretty well this year too, from what I've seen. Oliver Bonk, though, to me, he's slow and clunky and not very skilled, and he's physical. But I don't know. I just wasn't really blown away when I saw Bonk, and he played a lot of minutes that game. Thoughts on Riley Heidt? I dropped him a bit this year, or this week, down to more around where he is on average. I mean, Heidt, I think, kind of reminds me of Dawson Mercer a little, where there's skill and finishing. Like, he's got skill and a great shot, but I kind of want him to, like, he just kind of sits around waiting for passes to come to him, and not the most defensively active player, but he's fun to watch. Like, he's got some good hands, like, they're quick, but I don't think he uses them particularly effectively. But again, like, if you draft him and you stash him in the WHL for a couple of years, I think you could have a good scoring forward on your hands. Kind of, maybe he doesn't jump over immediately like Dawson Mercer did, but I feel like that he kind of gives me similar vibes to Dawson Mercer for sure. Which team would you expect Bedard to have the biggest impact on? Ooh, that's a good question. Let's see. Tankathon 2023. So best lottery odds is Anaheim. Oh my God. Trevor Zegras with Connor Bedard. That'd be so dumb. That's it. Anaheim. Connor Bedard in California would be just a gift to the National Hockey League. Like, Korea and Solani 2.0, right? Like, and that made the Ducks and the movies, that made the Ducks an iconic franchise in the 90s. I get the feeling that adding Connor Bedard to the Ducks with guys like Mintyukov on the back end and Drysdale if he stays healthy and Zellweger on the back end as well, like, just gross. And Anaheim probably, I think he would. Yeah. Is Canada going to sail home the World Junior Gold? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be pretty close this year, frankly. I do. Thoughts on Mario Patalaka? I don't like him. I don't think he's very good. Molnar most likely won't be at the World Juniors. That would be a shame. It would be fun if he was. Thoughts on the World Junior potential team? Oh, okay. I mean, I'm not going to give you early predictions for the tournament when half the teams haven't even announced their camp rosters. It's way too early. I don't know. But, I don't know. I feel like the States didn't bring the best team they could have brought. Canada left a couple of good players at home, but we'll see who they get from the NHL. I think Sweden has a pretty interesting team. But too early. I'm talking too much. My diaphragm hurts. Okay. Thoughts on Quentin Musty? I like Quentin Musty, actually. I didn't like him at the beginning of the year. Then I watched a couple more games, tracked a couple more games, and I go, okay. He kind of reminds me of like a similar brand to Matt Wood, where he finds ways out of trouble, finds ways out of pressure, problem solves really, really well, but brings still a lot of things that I like. He's physical, but not like overly physical. But he's a good player. I mean, I think he could be a rock solid Swiss Army knife in the middle six of a team. Perfectly acceptable. I don't know. I feel like there's a relatively limited ceiling there, but sometimes he does stuff where you go, okay, you don't see 6'2", 6'3" guys with skill like that very often. And he does it with like procedural play that seems to me to be smart and executed pretty well. I don't know. I like Quentin Musty as maybe an early second, mid-second kind of guy. Maybe like a Yanni Newman type player that I can recall from last year. But, I've come around on Musty quite a bit this year. Some thoughts on Edouard Chalet. Really, really, really smart most of the time. Good procedural player, moves pucks pretty well along the boards. I feel like pucks kind of have bled through him a lot in transition defensively this year. Like, just knocking down pucks is not his strong suit, turning them around. I feel like the lack of pace in his game might be the X factor. Like, if he really develops his skating, I think he could be a heck of a player. But I think, he started off real hot. The first game I tracked of him was outstanding, and the last two have been much more ho-hum, and I'm a little more skeptical, but I imagine he'll be at the World Junior, and I imagine he will perform quite well, because with the brain that he's got, and the sense of timing he's got, and the consistent sort of anticipation skill he's got, yeah, he's probably going to be a step ahead of some teams and do some damage. We went over Leo Carlsson a little while ago. Are there any players who are similar to David Kampf? David Kampf. Callum Richie. Anton Wahlberg, maybe. Might be that kind of guy in the future. I'll say Anton Wahlberg. Call it a day. We did Noah Darnilson already. Any new thoughts on Adam Fantilli? No. No. Any thoughts on Sam Honzek or Lukas Dragicevic? I like Honzek. Big, really good hands. Not big for the sake of being big. Pretty creative. Good vision of the offensive zone. Finds his way out of trouble with his hands pretty well. I've done a couple of games of his to this point, and he's been fine. The offensive production, I think I wouldn't be surprised if things tailed off a little bit as the year went on. It's ridiculous right now. But he's played extremely well, and when it comes to sort of carrying pucks up the ice and corralling pucks under pressure, he's done really well. He knows how to find space in the offensive zone and sort of gets his chances from medium danger quite a bit, which is nice. I like Honzek, but I feel like the production is a little spicy for what I remember seeing of him over the course of the season. Dragicevic is fascinating. I get it. I am sure that I'm going to get questions about Lukas Dragicevic all season long because he's scoring points. He is, I think, I mean, he reminds me of like of Denton Matejchuk a little bit last year, in the sense of like, I think what's happening is they're just giving him the puck because Tri-City doesn't have a whole lot of really high skill, high pace, finishers. And Dragicevic has a great shot, and he can move up the ice in a north direction quite well. And they're just sort of telling him to just go. Just do what you want, score points for us. Get Lucas the puck in the offensive zone. He'll put it on net, mop up. Because he's not really getting a whole lot from dangerous areas. A little more than you would expect for a defenseman, but not enormously. He's not shoveling pucks to the front of the net very much. He's not completing his passes particularly often, especially in transition. Part of that might be his team's fault, but I would watch Dragicevic and go, this guy has over a point a game? Like, this is strange. And he's playing a lot of minutes, and maybe that's where it's coming from. But a lot of it is even strength per 60 minutes. It's pretty crazy. But like I've done 2 games of his, and he's involved in 1.4% of the defensive transitions he faces. His backwards mobility is not very good. Monitoring defensive transitions, it's just not great. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that there's more that I'm not seeing. But Dragicevic, to me, if you want an offensive shoot first, ask questions later defenseman, like in the second round, yeah, you could convince me, I suppose. Like, he's ranked in the mid to late second round for me. Thoughts on Goyette recently? He still looks like David Goyette to me, right? Like a good playmaker, sort of makes plays through traffic really, really well. He's good. Oh, look, Gary is here. Is that really Gary? Is that the real Gary? Hello, Gary. Looking handsome. Thoughts on Matt Wood? Kind of went over him. Marco Kasper. Yeah, Marco Kasper, he's been good this year. Again, really well-rounded player. Smart at both ends. I figured he was going to be a good prospect, like rock solid, physical defensively, smart offensively. He's a great shooter. He's got a really, really good shot, which is great. And he's had a really good year. I'm excited to see what he can do in the next little while. But yeah, I've come around on Marco Kasper quite a bit, and I think, again, like in last year's draft, once you pass like the first few picks, my guy would have been Brad Lambert for sure, but Marco Kasper, I think, projects more likely to be a good NHL player. Maybe not as high upside as a guy like Brad Lambert, but Kasper will be a solid guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Samuel Savoy has had a bit of a points explosion. It was a half point per game last year and had something like 20 in his last 15. Have you viewed it? Not sure how you viewed his offensive upside last year, but does this raise it? Okay. So again, with the Quebec League, I feel like the Quebec League has taken a step back relative to the other junior leagues in Canada over the years. But Samuel Savoy is one of the more high-pace, high-intensity guys in the QMJHL that I remember seeing last year. I think that I'm surprised at just how much he's scoring, but it doesn't really surprise me that he's scoring more than he did. I remember watching him last year. I had him on my list, and I was going, well, I don't know how he's not scoring more, but I just feel like the skill level and the pace that he brought wasn't really brought to finishing. Like, getting to the net, he kind of would shovel the puck at the goalies rather than sort of make a move and try to finish or look for a line mate. I didn't track any games, and I probably should have, but I really liked watching him when I saw him. I just figured he might peak as like a third line energy guy in the NHL if that's what he becomes, if he does get to that point. I don't know if there's like massive upside there, but I do think that he's outperforming his draft slot, and he's done pretty well, getting pucks up the ice, and finishing a little better than he did last year, and certainly brings pace that I think a lot of Q guys just don't have. In which order would you rank the following CHL defensemen? Molendik, Tourigny, Akey, and Morin. I'd go Molendik, Akey, Morin, Tourigny. Literally in the order you posted them. Jean Danielle, what's going on? I did, yeah. I had 2 weeks off from YouTube. Yeah, it was a good time. I didn't do a stream last week because I went to the Leaf game in Toronto, and then the next day I flew out to Seattle, so I just didn't have the time to do a stream unless you wanted me to do one from the plane, which I don't think anybody on my plane would have wanted, considering my flight was at night and 5 hours long. And I was busy watching Daniil Boot and Alex Siernik be rock stars, so there was that. But it was a good time off. Seattle's a lovely place. Highly recommended. Have you seen any Cole Hudson? I'd like the Habs to draft him for obvious reasons. Yeah, I've seen a bit of Cole Hudson. I don't I don't like him as much as Lane, but it's a 2024 prospect, so we'll see next year. Lucas St. Louis thoughts. Ask me next week. Lucas St. Louis on my schedule for next week. I have a couple. I didn't really mind Lucas St. Louis, but I wondered if he was just going to be a good, skilled college defender, and beyond that might be really tough. But I'll check him out this week. I'll check him out this week and have a peek. Which one do you like more, women's volleyball or women's hockey? Great question. Women's volleyball. Volleyball is incredible. I honestly, like, I played volleyball in high school. I loved it. I was bad. I got benched a lot. It was bad. I could spike pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I was tall. I blocked well. I blocked really well. I'll say that too. And then they raised the nets for varsity, and I wasn't nearly as good. And everybody on the other teams were like 6'5", and I was still 6 feet. But I was 6 feet at 13, so I was a hell of a blocker when I was in middle school. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I love women's volleyball. Just like the technical precision of volleyball in general. They are just, I mean, it's incredible. Like you don't like boiling things down to like the women do this and the men do this, but like the power the men have is really impressive, but just the precision of the women's game is incredible. Like it's everything is so pinpoint and organized, and the placement of their shots is just so great. Not to say the men don't do that, but it's really, I mean, and the women can certainly, hit those balls real hard, but I love watching women's volleyball, especially, men's it's exciting for sure, but women, I think women's volleyball has a lot that they bring to the table that I think is one of the, I think in terms of watching women's sports, it's one of the best in the world. Women's hockey, I think it's good for sure. Women's hockey, I think, is on a really good path. They've come a long way. I mean, I remember the first women's tournament when they were in Nagano when I was a kid, and they've come a long way since then. Other countries have come a really long way. The junior tournaments for women's hockey, I'd argue, are better than the senior ones. I love watching the under 18 women's tournaments just because you see so much more parity, and the passion is so incredible, and things are totally unique down there. But I don't know. I guess to answer your question with too many words, like when I watch women's hockey relative to men's hockey, like I'll watch women's hockey, but I still, the NHL is still an insane product. Whereas men's and women's volleyball, like, man, I don't care. I'll watch either. I love both of them. And women's volleyball is just incredible. Who's a puck mover in the middle first round? Sandin Pellikka, probably. I imagine Gulyayev might be available around there. Cagnoni, Melendic. There's a few for you can chew on. Is Huberdeau not meant for Sutter's system? Do I sell low in fantasy or wait? I don't know. I can't give you a good answer on that. I have not watched much Calgary Flames hockey this year. I get the feeling, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, Huberdeau last year wildly outperformed expectations, right? Like, you look, a lot of it was on the power play. His 5-on-5 results were not nearly as good. Like, when Alan Walsh was running around talking about him all year long, analytics people went like an inch beneath the surface of his analytical profile and went, really? Like, I don't think so. Like, I think all these other guys have a better claim to the Hart Trophy than Jonathan Huberdeau. And I feel like this, I mean, part of me, I think I said this last stream, part of it is just regression, I think, and just sort of playing his more natural level of play, but also it's not so good. It's regressed real hard, and I don't know if that's how it should be. It's not great. It's not great. Thoughts on how many 2023 prospects will make the NHL in their draft year? Great question. I would estimate 3. Bedard, Fantilli, Karlsson. I wouldn't be surprised if they made it. Trying to think of another one. Like, part of me wants to say Edward Chalet, but I don't think that's going to happen. Michkov, I don't think it's going to happen. Benson, I wouldn't do it. Crystal, I wouldn't do it. Maybe you bring over, like, a Nate Danielson might be able to do it, but I wouldn't push for that. But I'd say Bedard, Fantilli, Karlsson. Was there any point in 2019 where you thought Kakko goes before Hughes? No. What do you think Riley Kidney caps out at, NHL player? I think that's too early to tell. we'll see how he does in the AHL first. I'm always more cautious about Riley Kidney. But good for him for scoring so much. Thoughts on Carey Terrence and Rashid Samagulin? I'm not a huge fan of Samagulin when I've seen him. I know he's scoring, but I don't buy it. Carey Terrence does pretty much everything but score. He's not a very good finisher at all, but he's a good transition guy. Like, he's a good puck carrier. He's got some skill. He's on my watch list. He's fine. He's fine. I think he's on my watch list. He should be. Am I blind? He should be. Yeah, he is. Okay, he is. I'm not blind. Good to know. This light is really bright, though. Jeez. Rank the highest ceilings and floors. Okay, highest ceiling of Benson, Carlson, Crystal, Michkov, Jaeger. Highest ceiling. Crystal, Carlson, Benson. No, wait, sorry. Crystal, Carlson, Michkov, Benson, Jaeger for ceiling, I would say. And the highest floor, Carlson, Benson, Michkov, Crystal, Jaeger. That's where I would sit. Thoughts on Lukas Reichel since he's been drafted? Honestly, have not seen a ton of him. The AHL is a bit of a blind spot for me. I've seen bits of him. I like Lukas Reichel a lot. I've always liked Lukas Reichel a lot. I was thrilled to see him drafted where he went to Chicago at 19. Yeah, he's good. Lukas Reichel, he's been good. Thoughts on Lekaramaki and Nemec's season so far? I've only seen a little bit of Nemec. Lekaramaki, I mean, he's been kind of underwhelming in the games I've seen overseas, but he's still a really good finisher. Like, again, Lekaramaki is going to take time because he's another one of these guys that I track where he shoots from everywhere, not a ton of activity elsewhere, not super effective elsewhere, but steadily got a little more comfortable against men last year. The shot's always going to be there, but there's going to need to be more in order to project scoring to the next level. He's going to take time. Nemec, I have not seen in the AHL much at all. Sorry. Who's this year's short king? Andrew Crystal. Could you look at Kravtsov's analytics? Dude, you ask me about Vitaly Kravtsov every single week. He's like 48 years old. Like you say in your question, he's getting healthy scratched. Do I think they're bad at developing youth? I think I think that the New York Rangers with Bobrov as their head of European scouting, he put his chips on the table for the wrong guys. I think that's just the fundamental problem. Lias Andersson, yeah, you draft Capo Caco second overall, and that's probably was the thing that you should have done at the time. But yeah, I mean, part of it might be look, I think the David Quinn style of play, and now there's maybe to a lesser extent Gerard Gallant style of play, it does not help guys like Anderson, Kravtsov, Lafreniere, and Kakko maximize their top end abilities because they're trying to make them more physically resilient and more physically strong and better off the puck when that's just not really their brand. I've watched a lot of Lias Andersson over the years, though. It was asinine that he was drafted where he was drafted. I watched a lot of Vitaly Kravtsov the year he was draft eligible. Craziness where he was drafted, in my opinion, but really good catch and release shooter. Another cautionary tale of drafting guys that shoot and don't do much else. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you want me to tell you about Vitaly Kravtsov. I don't know. I feel like Tanner Melendek is very underrated. His tools are too good to pass on. You're not wrong. He is, I think, underrated. I think there's a ton of upside to work with him. He's going to be fine. He's not producing as much as he could, but I would definitely, again, want to get in his ear and be like, hey, you're capable of driving more offense, bro. Let's go. Like, let's party. Let's have some fun. Because he kind of keeps things a little restrained once he carries the puck and sort of passes it off to someone else. My family and I plan on making the trip down to Nashville in June for the draft. Do you have any idea of when the tickets usually go on sale? Not sure. I think it's usually in the early part of the year, like February, March, April kind of thing. I would just try to stay on top. I mean, you'll find out, right? I would just stay on top of, I think the NHL entry draft has a newsletter. You can have like literally a newsletter. So when the tickets go on sale, you can sign up for that and they'll tell you. But yeah. Sam McGilligan's here. Crap. Okay. Well, he's just trolling me. Great. Do you think the NHL will ever go beyond the 32 team mark? Will Quebec ever get a team? I mean, I don't know. No professional league has more than 32 teams, right? I think the NFL has 32. 32 is a lot of teams. maybe. I think there's enough of a market for it to make sense. I think Quebec, I don't know. Like, I feel like Quebec is more complicated just because, like it is a different environment up there. And I think the more we learn about these players in the modern era, they care a lot about the environment in which they're in, right? Like, a lot of guys are being more confident and forcing moves out of where they play for a long time. It's, I don't know. I feel like Houston is far more likely, Kansas City far more likely. Places that have other professional sports teams that the NHL thinks they can compete with. I mean, I'd love to see the NHL in some creative places that really love hockey, but those places often just don't have the economies that these other big cities have. Like, the NHL in like Halifax would be friggin' unbelievable. I feel like that would be an incredible NHL town, but there's like 200,000 people in Halifax, and it's just not as wealthy a place as any other NHL market, and it would be really tough to make that work, I think, at least in terms of scaling with the rest of the NHL. Anyway, we'll see. Favorite American to watch this year? I would say, I was about to say Adam Fantilli, LOL. Gavin Brindley. I'd say Gavin Brindley. He's my favorite to watch, I'd say. Lucas Gustafson is the only Boston College guy in their top 9 that's yet to be drafted, and he's 5th as a defenseman. What gives? Your guess is as good as mine, Tyler. I don't know. I keep yelling about him for 2 straight years, and no one does anything. So I don't know. I just keep yelling about him. Can you compare Musty and Barlow? Sure. If you could blend them together, you'd have a great hockey player. Barlow does basically nothing but shoot the puck really good. And Quentin Musty does everything but finish really good. He's a really good procedural guy, good hands, good skill, good vision, physical, good under pressure. Barlow, extraordinarily inactive at pretty much everything across the board, but he shoots really good, and that works for him. Sam needs to go home. He's doing too many drugs. Thoughts on Lane Hutson's performance in his D+1 year? I'm not surprised. The guy friggin' rocks. Need to assess the elephant in the room. How dare you put Carly Rae Jepsen over someone as Canadian as maple syrup in Mrs. Shania Twain? You know what, Seb? I don't give a crap. I don't give a rat's patoot about your opinions regarding Carly Rae Jepsen, my pop star, my Canadian pop star queen. I mean, I love Shania Twain, dude. Like, don't get me wrong. If Shania Twain comes on the radio or on karaoke, like, I'm right there. I'm there. I'm ready to go. But Carly Rae Jepsen, like, yeah, Call Me Maybe is a bop, but she has a lot of like legitimately really good music out there, and she's got good vibes. Shania Twain does too. I think you asked about Avril Lavigne at the same time too. They're all wonderful. They're all great. They're all timeless Canadian classics. How much would you pay Horvat if it was an 8-year contract? I don't know. He's making like 5 something now. He's 28, I want to say. Like, he's not old. Like 7-ish, I think. Yeah, he's got 20 goals and 9 assists. I'm always wary of guys that score more goals than they have assists. I'll say that. If it was 8 years for Horvat, yeah, like 7 something, somewhere in there. Like 8 would be a lot for him, I think. I don't know. He could be a 30 goal scorer, 30 goals, 20 assists every year, 35-25. Is that worth $7 million? I mean, I don't know. I like how he plays though. I have a lot of respect for how he plays. I have a lot of respect for how he plays. And I feel like he's a good dude to have in the room. What's that worth? Because on ice is what matters. But yeah, I don't know. Bo Horvat, yeah, I'd go somewhere in the 7 range in this climate, I guess. How is Gulyayev from typical high-profile NHL defenseman? He's a goddamn rocket ship on skates at that level. He just give him the puck at the goal line, and he'll put it in the offensive zone and make a play. I don't know. There's not many NHL guys that do that. But yeah, he's bananas. He's very good. Were you surprised Rinzel went in the first round? Not really. I have seen him in the USHL. I would be very, very cautious of criticizing him based on what I've seen of Waterloo. I think he's underproducing for what he's done. Really darn good. Really, really darn good. I don't know. The skill level is there. The mobility is there. you give him, he's going to be a long-term project. You give him a couple of years in college, and I feel like he's only going to get better and better every year. Thoughts on Cutter Gauthier's NCAA season? He's been good. He's been good. I've seen him a little bit here and there. He's still Cutter Gauthier, like good skill, rangy dude, really good shooter. He's Cutter Gauthier still. In your last stream, you talked about how Goalie changed your view of defenseman. Who gains the most from your new POV? I kind of touched on that, but I would say Simashev, Dvorak, Jakub Dvorak, David Reinbacher. Early in the year, I would have said Theo Lindstein, but I don't think that's true anymore. Tom Willander is higher on my board, I think, than he probably would have been in other years. But I don't see a ton. There's not many Caden Goolies, and I think that's part of the point that I was trying to get at, right? Like Caden Gooley is that like really typical example of like I might have misread things on that one. Sorry, I'm trying to listen for something in my house here. There's something happening in another room, and I'm trying to... Anyway, back to the questions. Aside from all the controversy, honest thoughts on Logan Mailloux and his potential. We went over this earlier. Look, my analysis is going to be the same. He's got warts. He's not a very good player in his own end. He is frustrating. He goes for physical play and cross checks all the time and gets beat all the time. If he has the puck and he's skating in a straight line and shooting the puck, he is good. Other than that, I don't see anything out of Logan Mailloux that really blows my mind. That's it. Look, I say this every single time he gets brought up. I wouldn't have drafted him. The damage was done when he was drafted. I really hope that things are what they say they are with him. But in terms of the actual game, I still feel like it's bizarre how much attention he gets. It's bizarre. It's bizarre to me at this point. Like, come on. Thoughts on Gleb Trikazov so far this season? He's been good. He's still Gleb Trikazov. He's got lessons to learn, but I think he just made his KHL debut. He's taken some steps, and I'm excited to see him keep going. I mean, I wish he could see him at the World Juniors, but such is life. Speak about Griffin Erdman. Really fun, good 200-foot guy. I mean, I'm surprised he's not scoring more. He gets his chances. He makes his chances. I like him a lot, but I just haven't. I feel like he's a late round swing, and maybe you get a nice depth guy on your NHL roster because he goes fast and hits hard. What do you think went wrong with Alex Turcotte? Injuries, that sucks. That's a big problem. And I feel like he never really gained that next step of pace in his game. Like, that was kind of the criticism at the time, was that he was kind of a really smart puck managing center, but with some good skill as well and nice adaptive thinking, but he needed to like put guys on their heels more. And I just don't think he ever got that. And that's really tough to overcome. But the big thing, I think injuries just really knocked him off his rocker a lot. Any fun players from non-traditional hockey markets to watch for at other divisions of the World Juniors this year? That is a great question. I know there are good answers. Japan will have a fun team. That's the big one. Croatia has a kid playing in Sweden, Bruno Idzon. He is a lot of fun. Let me just go to this here. I just need to refresh my memory because some of the rosters are out for these levels. I don't think there's any in the 1A tournament that I can think of. I mean, there's Norway might have a couple. Let's see who's on this team. Michael Brensig Nygaard is one you'd want to watch in Norway. Petter Vesterheim is one that I think you might want to watch this year as an eligible. I'm surprised that Elias Straume-Vatna isn't there because he's also been really, really good this year. But Bronsek Nygaard is probably the guy you'll want to keep an eye on. Estonia has a guy, I think, that will probably be there. What's his name? David Timofeyev. He's an 06, but I've liked him when I've caught him. And he plays at the under 18 level in Finland right now. Bruno Idzon for Croatia for sure, I think will be there because I think he was there last year. He's an 06 as well, that you'll want to keep an eye on. He was at the under 20s last year, had 5 points in 4 games at the D2B level. He'll be a good time because that guy can absolutely rip hockey pucks. If you want to watch Division 2A, feel free. And Division 2B, I don't think there's anything down there. But I'd say Idjan is probably the guy at the lowest level that you'll probably want to watch. Yeah, that would probably be the ones. Any word on Scott Morrow? Yeah, I mean, Scott Morrow, you mentioned that he hasn't had a lot of hype this year. It's really hard to maintain that level of hype for that long, just like it's really hard to maintain that level of production for that long. I have all the faith in the world that Scott Morrow is going to be just fine. He's still doing really well at Massachusetts. He'll be fine. And he's a ton of fun. What more could you want? Did Yzerman make a mistake drafting Bachelnikov in the second round, or should he do someone else? And can you see Kasper as a first-line center? I wouldn't say it was a mistake. It was higher than I would have taken Bachelnikov. I didn't have Bachelnikov ranked. I still think that he's not going to project to high levels unless he has really major improvements to like his speed and sort of 200-foot play. But boy, that kid can shoot, and he's got some good offensive tools finishing. But I think with Bachelnikov, I mean, who else would I have drafted in that slot? Like Lane Hudson would have been my guy there. If I have to pull up the draft from 2022. Because was Seamus Casey on the board? Like Bachelnikov went 52. Yeah, Casey was off the board. Yeah, like Gleb would have been on my board there. Hudson probably. Kaliodelius has been very good in the games I've seen as well. But yeah, I mean, not much longer after that, if people were banging the table for Dmitry Bachelnikov, like whatever, I don't know, it's not that big of a deal. But there was a couple of guys in that range, like David Goyette even, I feel like I would have rather had. And we've talked about Ryan Greene in the past, but like if someone was like, hey, this Ryan Greene guy's pretty good, and I had the data that I had on some certain areas being really good, then maybe that would be an option too. But anyway, I wouldn't say it was a mistake though. I don't think so. Can I see Kasper as a first line center? No. Second or third, a really good third, maybe a second line center, yes. Who's your player comparable in your ball hockey league? I take a lot of shots from the point. Once in a while, I'll have a nice jump up into the offensive zone, make a play. But I also play really physical in my own end. Trying to think. Colton Parayko? I don't know. What are the key things Dvorsky needs to fix to rise significantly in your rankings? Got to keep his feet moving. Like, he is really stagnant, really slow. Just more puck control as well. His skill is not super high end. Those are the biggest things. Just push pace more than he does, and better puck control. Because I just don't see much with the puck on his stick where I'm going, okay, this guy's a top 10 guy. I just don't see that relative to the guys I have in my top 10. But like he's in my first round right now, barely, but he's in my first round. It's fine. What are your thoughts on Luca Cagnoni? Really good puck carrier, really confident guy. He's a ton of fun, but I have some questions about him. I still don't know what those questions exactly are, but he's a good puck carrier, a good offensive dude, shoots a lot from the point without much offensive creativity, but as a confident puck transporter, I think he's pretty good at it. But he's kind of slowly moved down my list a little bit over the course of the year. Have you tracked the development of William Stromgren? Not really. I know he's kind of like, he was always a guy where it's like, he probably won't work, but if he works, he's going to be awesome. I know he's on the World Junior team, which is going to be great. I think he'll be a ton of fun to watch there. Come on. Open up. While that loads. Oh, here it is. Yeah, he's still kind of struggling in the SHL, for sure. But at least he's playing consistently there, so that's good. We'll see how he is with the World Junior. What do you think Matt Beniers' ceiling is? Top 6 center. He looks fantastic for Seattle this year. When I saw him live, I thought he looked fantastic. Not much else to say. Still in love with Sean Farrell. Sure. Yeah, I like Sean Farrell. Is he the best forward prospect for the Habs right now? Not including Slafkovsky, you say? Let's take a look. Montreal. I don't know. I like Owen Beck quite a bit based on what I've seen this year. Best forward prospect for Montreal. Yeah, I wouldn't say Gandon, not Rohrer. No. Meshar, I think could be up there too. Yeah. I'd say Meshar or Beck. Probably I'd put ahead of Farrell, but those are good players, and Farrell's right there with them. Why did so many teams pass on Jason Robertson? What did you think of him in his draft year? Well, he was ranked 17th on my board that year. I loved him. It was the same kind of thing as like Arthur Kaliev, where I was watching Arthur Kaliev and I was like, well, even if this guy has the problems people are talking about, he's still like gonna score points. Like, you put him in the NHL, he's gonna shoot and he can make a play and he can score points. So like, if you get him in the second round like people had him, then yeah, I'm happy about that. Robertson, people questioned his skating, but I always thought that he was perfectly fine. Like, Robertson didn't play on the best team, and I think if you sort of dug a little deeper in his data, like, and you just, like, the big reason I liked him was because he had points on like half his team's goals, and they were goals and assists, and I watched some tape on him, and I'm like, yeah, this guy he can shoot, he can make a play. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he makes it work. Like, he's a good example of making it work around not being the best skater and just having unbelievable offensive tools. So yeah, he's better than I thought he would be in the NHL, but I always have loved him. Lane Hutson would have been your pick at any slot in the second round. Well, I mean, at 38 was where the Leafs picked, and I did put Hutson down. I would have loved to have Brad Lambert at 25 before the Leafs traded the pick, but such is life. I really thought about it hard live on camera. Gleb, Casey, and Trikazov were my guys there. I think Gleb was my highest ranked guy, but I was trying to be sneaky and get him later, but I always underestimate the Carolina Hurricanes. But Lane Hutson at 38, I'm happy with that, and he's been having a good year. So, maybe Seamus Casey might be a little bit of a better option, but I don't know. I've been a little bit more impressed with Hutson this year than Casey, but I like them both and think they're both great. Thoughts on Paul Ludwinski? One thing I will say, one thing I love to do is go back and, if I were the Arizona Coyotes and not made the Connor Geekie trade, who you would have ended up with. And it's something along the lines of like Logan Cooley, Gleb Trikazov, Seamus Casey, Lane Hutson, like Owen Beck. Like, I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but it was hilarious. Thoughts on Paul Ludwinski? I still like him. I know he's not producing what I expected from this year, but still a long way to go. And I feel like his game at the end of the day isn't going to be scoring a ton of points. I think that's the problem that he had last year, was a lot of things went right except finishing. And I feel like that held him back. If you're the Montreal Canadiens this year and you have the 8th overall pick, are you picking Chalet or do you reach on a goalie prospect? I'm not reaching on a goalie prospect in the top 10 this year. Full stop. No way. Chalet at 8 would be a good slot. I've got him at 8. If Michkov's available at 8 by some miracle, I feel like the Habs would love to have a Matvei Michkov on their team. I feel like Andrew Crystal will be there at 8. I feel like Crystal with Cole Caulfield together, they might be small, but who cares? Like, those guys would be dynamite, and I feel like Habs fans would adore Andrew Crystal. Pick one player you'd move to a different team for development or evaluation. Ooh, good question. That implies that there's a bad team and you move the bad team player to a good one. Maybe, I don't know, like Olin Zellweger with Carolina, I feel like would be hilarious if they could pull that off, which would be hilarious. So we'll just do that and move on. From this year's draft. I don't know. No, it's too specific. It's too specific for me. I'm half joking, but it's just there's a lot of options and I don't know who to say. After looking at your pool rankings, I almost feel like you have something against middle six prospects. A solid middle guy a la Lehkonen can be a game changer, but you seem to lose them all in depth. Go back and look at Arturi Lehkonen's draft year production, because he was like lights out when he was a draft eligible. Like, lights out. And he settled as a middle six guy. Like, Arturi Lehkonen, like, I feel like Gavin Brindley could be like an Arturi Lehkonen type player. or like Idar Suniev could be like an Arturi Lehkonen player, right? Like, I have something against middle six prospects because I'm not interested in drafting guys that I think could be middle six players in the first round. Like, with my first round pick, I want to take a chance, right? Like, I want to take a guy where I'm like, I want you because guys that play like you in the NHL don't grow on trees. It's really hard to get there, but I think you're good enough to get there. And maybe I'll miss on some of them, but I'd rather that than go, yeah, like we could see it being in our like third line, maybe a decent second line guy, whatever. Like, I just don't see the pull of that personally. And I mean, it depends on what you mean, right? Like, what do you mean by middle six prospects? Like, again, like I'm not drafting guys, especially really high, to be like, yeah, I think you could play in the middle of my lineup, right? Like, if other teams want that, then fine. But I also know for a fact that like my rankings aren't how I would draft the guys in order, right? Like William Whitelaw, I would probably, if I did my intel right, I'd probably think if he fell to the second round, I could snag him, right? Like, this is what I mean. Like, the NHL draft is a game of volume, not picking the guy, right? Like, what you need to do in the draft is acquire capital. And in this draft, in my opinion, if you're not in the top 7, you trade down. You just trade down. You accumulate whatever, because guys like William Whitelaw will be there in the second round. And then you get what to me is a first round player in the second round. Maybe Trey Augustine is a guy that, in my opinion, is a first round goaltending prospect you could get in the second round. Jacob Fowler, second round, if you have a bunch of picks, right? Like, again, if you go to what, like in retrospect, you could say, well, what a great draft this team had, even though 2 of the 6 high upside guys you draft don't work out, or even 3 of them. If you still end up with 3 high upside draft picks, no one gives a crap. They love the guys that worked out. So to me, my strategy is always just give yourself the best chance you can and swing for as hard an upside pick as you can and put the kid in a situation where they're going to be able to play their way and get better and better and better every year, and be honest with them about the flaws that are holding them back from being one of those guys where they're in the top 7 and it's like, wow, I would never trade my pick to give up an option of one of these guys. I don't know. My philosophy is weighed towards rare skill sets, things that move the needle in the NHL, not guys who might be able to tread water or do okay and produce here and there in the NHL. Like, that's just not what my focus is. Past a certain point in the draft, yeah, of course. Like, I'll draft the guys that I think could one day tread water in the NHL, but that point is later than most people, I think. Like, to me, in the third round, whatever, like, all bets are off. How was Seattle? Did you enjoy our snow? It's funny, when I was in the cab on the way from the airport to my hotel, my cab driver we were talking and I said, oh, I'm from Canada. And he goes, oh, is it snowy in Canada yet? I'm like, it snowed a little, but it didn't stick. He goes, oh, it snowed in Seattle this morning. And it was a nightmare on the roads all day. And when I ran into, who was it? I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about the weather because that's what you do. And they were saying, oh, like, we got like this much snow, the whole city shuts down, everybody loses their minds. So that was kind of funny. I enjoyed that. But it did rain a little while I was there in typical Seattle fashion, but we also got a very beautiful day for the day of the conference, which was also really great. So I love Seattle. Where do you think Crystal gets taken? 12. Would it be smarter for Bedard to accept a trade to Kamloops and play long in the spring, or play a round or 2 with Regina and have more time to get ready in the NHL? I don't think it matters because he's not getting traded. I don't think it matters. He's not going to get traded. I mean, I would imagine that if he wanted to be traded, he would have been traded by now, or there would be unbelievable amounts of trade rumors about him being traded. I think the last elite player that got traded in their draft year was John Tavares, who got traded to London mid-season. I mean, look, Connor Bedard is the Regina Pats. It is blatantly obvious from the games I've tracked of Bedard that their game plan is get the puck to Connor and let Connor do what he wants, go to the net. That's their game plan. And when Connor Bedard's not on the ice, it's just tread water and survive. That basically is how it goes. Is that a good way to do it? No. But what Regina is doing is selling tickets, and they're selling merchandise, and they're flush with cash. Trading Connor Bedard gives you assets on paper for your team, but I think they are also thinking about this as Connor Bedard's our ticket to financial flexibility, and the draft, we can deal with that later. I don't think he's going to get traded. They've come out really heavily, really like aggressively telling the media, like, stop asking us. He's not going to be traded. And I feel like if Connor Bedard wanted to be traded and his GM and head coach was out there being like, we're not trading him, and he wanted a trade, there would be a news story there already for sure, right? Like Jeff Merrick would be calling him every single day. So yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. In my opinion, would it be smarter for him to get traded? I don't think it really matters. Lots of other players have played for not great draft eligible teams and been just fine. If it means, here's another way to think about it. If Regina gets bounced in the first round, he could go to the World Championships. How about that? That would be fun. I feel like he's good enough to play there. Matty Beniers did, so Connor Bedard probably could. Could be nice. Who's the best defensive defender this year? I would probably go Simashev. Yeah, I'd go Simashev. There's not a ton of them this year, I don't think. I think Reinbacher could be that, but I think right now it's Simashev. Where do you rank Bedard as a prospect amongst previous first overall picks? I probably would put him a shade behind McDavid and Matthews, but I'm trying to think of the rest. That's 15, 16. 17 was Hischier, way ahead of him. 18, Dahlin, ahead of him. 19, Jack Hughes, ahead of him. 20, Lafreniere, ahead of him. 21, Power, ahead of him. 22, Wright, ahead of him. Yeah, probably behind McDavid, Matthews. For me, it's McDavid, Matthews, Bedard. I would say that. Bedard, Fantilli, and Hughes probably is a tie. How many superstars do you think will potentially come from this draft? Well, I don't know what a superstar is. Explain to me what a superstar is, because I don't know. Highly dependent on the market they go to, highly dependent on how good the team they go to becomes, highly dependent on a whole bunch of different factors. I don't know. Superstar is like a social thing, not an on-ice thing, in my opinion. Like, to me, Zygmunt Palffy was a superstar, but played on bad teams and never got any publicity because he played on the other team in New York and the terrible 2000s LA Kings. But he scored like a superstar, but he wasn't a superstar. Make that for what you will. Nate Danielson is really starting to produce. What are your thoughts? Big fan. Love him. He's a really, really good player. Good north-south guy, great playmaker, good shooter. He's starting to use his shot more. Big fan. Anyone else other than Bedard worth drafting on Regina? Not really. Tanner Howe next year, yes, for sure. But no, I don't think so. Is Tanner Howe going to be a decent prospect for 2024? Yes. Last question. Oh, it's a statement. Yeah, Palffy bringing home some oldies. It's true, though, right? Like, if you look at his production relative to the league when he was playing, he was excellent. Excellent player. He was like 35 points ahead of the next highest scorer. I think there was one year he was in the Kings. He was their leading scorer. Their second leading scorer was a 36-something-year-old Matthew Schneider. There's a name to look up. He was a defenseman. Those teams were bad, and there was Ziggy Palffy the whole way doing his thing. Yeah, so anyway, thank you very much for watching. This was a great evening. It's always nice to be back. Again, another reminder, we will be back next week, same time, same place next week on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you once again to Fanatics for sponsoring the show. You can scan the QR code above my head or use the affiliate link in the description and get I'll get a nice little kickback from whatever you buy on the shop, no matter what it is. McKean's Hockey as well. Thank you for helping me out with the show and being a nice host for a lot of my content. And yeah, Marcus Gustafson's Blue Line Hockey IQ program. Clearly it's working for his son. It might work for you or your children. So use my coupon code Scouching to get 10% off. You get to learn a lot more about hockey sense than you would think and play in a higher end hockey game. So thank you very much for joining me. Next Thursday, 8 p.m. We'll see you here. Same time, same place. Good evening. Have a pleasant time. Be safe. A lot of sickness going around, so do your thing. Happy holidays, even though I'll see you before Christmas. And see you then. Au revoir.